Welcome back, and if you've just joined us, you're watching our continuing coverage of the Ondo State governorship election, and it's coming up to something around 2:30 p.m. when voting is officially expected to close. But don't forget that if there are still voters on the queue in any of the polling unit at all, even after 2:30, they will be allowed to vote. So the last person on the queue would be allowed to vote before counting would begin at the various polling units. Don't forget, altogether, we have over 3,000 polling units in Ondo State and 18 local government areas where election is currently taking place. So joining me now on the program for our continuing analysis now of what is happening in Ondo State is political affairs and legal practitioner Libros Oshoma, who joins us in the studio. Also joining us is Muyiwa Akintunde, who is a public affairs analyst. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program. Let me start with you, Libros. Help us understand the process by which a governor can be declared, by which a candidate now can be declared winner of a governorship election.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. And that should be section 179, subsection 2 of the Constitution. And if you permit me, for the benefit of our viewers, to quickly read directly from the Constitution, subsection 2, a candidate for an election to the office of the governor of a state shall be deemed to have been duly elected where there been 2 or more candidates, as in this case, he has the highest number of vote cast in the election, and B, he has not less than 1/3, he had not less than 1/4 of all the vote cast in each of at least 2/3 of all the local governments of the states. And so, in default of a candidate duly elected in accordance with subsection 2 of this section, there shall be a second election in accordance with subsection 4 of this section, at which the only candidate shall be the candidate who scored the highest number of vote cast at the election, and one among the remaining candidates who scored majority of votes in the highest number of local government areas in the state. So however that where there are more than one candidate with a majority of vote cast in the highest number of the local government area, the candidate among them with the next highest total vote cast at the election shall be the second candidate. So in this case, if for a candidate to be declared winner of the election, the candidate must not only score the highest number of vote cast, he must also score at least 1/4 of the total vote in 2/3 of the local government. So thank God, in this election, just like you had the national election where you had people arguing whether Abuja, should have special status. So there is no local government territory, or the state's headquarters is not a special state that people will now begin to argue.
Yeah, I was going to ask that if it's compulsory that you must win Akure, for instance.
No,
that is
no. They all carry. There are no special votes. There are no special votes. The court world over had consistently ruled on that in democracy. There are no special votes, and so for this, you don't have to win Akure. You can win, but at least provided you have the highest number of vote cast, and then you don't even need to win either of the local government. Just have the highest number of vote cast and have at least 1/4 of the total number of vote cast in 2/3 of the local government. So that's what the rule requires.
And of course, that section of the Constitution talked about a possible runoff. But do you see that playing out in this case? Do you foresee any kind of runoff?
Let's tell ourselves the truth. This is a one-horse race. There's no need pretending about it. I just pity for Agbola. He probably would have been the one enjoying what Ayedatiwa is enjoying today, if not the fact that, he fell out with the former governor and then he was impeached before Ayedatiwa was brought on board. And that same broom that was used for Agbola was almost used for Ayedatiwa until the unfortunate incidents that happened to Aketi happened. And today, Ayedatiwa is riding, almost coasting home, because he's almost the one in the race. The other party had crisis, and then Agbola does not have, you can say he has the capacity, but he does not have the financial muscle to actually, truly come into this election. And then Mimiko's brother is, I won't call him a contender, I would call him, in this election, in every election, like you have, contenders and pretenders. I would call the Mimiko candidate a pretender. Maybe he just, his brother haven't been a governor for 8 years in that state.
And by the way, his brother is currently supporting the governorship candidate of the APC. That's the incumbent governor.
Exactly. So your brother, who is the political heavyweight, who was a former governor, has thrown his weight behind the current governor. Even the last election, when his brother threw his weight behind, it was the PDP candidate also. Yet he didn't win, not to talk of now that your brother is even supporting, the Ekuben governor. So the Ekuben basically is costing him. So I don't see, I don't envisage, section 179 subsection 3 playing out, in that election.
Muyiwa, do you hold the same view? Because, quite a lot of people still also think it's a one-horse race, that the PDP doesn't stand a chance here.
Yeah, truly, we don't have to pretend. It's a one-horse race. PDP has done a lot to itself that, you really can't, even in their heart of hearts, they themselves will know that they can't get anywhere with this election. You have a situation where Agbola, the deputy to Akiti, like Labrador said, if he had stayed within APC and probably ran the race with Akiti, and what happened eventually happened, he would still have been deputy, and then he will have had the opportunity of running this election today instead of Aiyedatiwa. One of the factors that will also count against the PDP candidate, Agbola, is that both himself and Aiyedatiwa are from the same senatorial zone.
Yes, that's true.
Are from the same area. So they are both of them are fishing from the same pond, so to say. And it doesn't appear as if
and that is Ondo South Senatorial District.
Ondo South, the larger axis, Okitipupa and all of those areas. And then the powers that be in other zones, like for instance, Ondo Central, where you have the former, the governorship candidate, you have Mimiko, you have the governorship candidate the last election, Itai or Jegede, all of them really are not pulling their weight behind the candidate of the PDP.
That's true.
And then you also have another, Akure
if you go to Ondo North as well.
Akure has the largest population in Ondo State, but then next to it is Owo in Ondo North. And that's where Aiyedatiwa has cleverly picked his running mate from. So that factor will also count for him there. And so I don't see where you can say the route to victory for Agbola and PDP is. So I also agree that it's a one-horse race. But let's see how it turns out. I don't see any surprises in this election.
No surprises. So we just have to wait and see. So, Libras, this is not in any way going to be like the kind of close contest we saw in Edo State.
Not at all. Not at all. In Edo, the difference between this and Edo is that we all know in Edo you had an Ekuben governor who was in PDP and who was supporting, a candidate through his weight, finances and otherwise behind a candidate. Even though you would say the candidate, the PDP, had fractions, but the governor was solidly behind him, and so for an outgoing governor, a sitting governor, to fully support a candidate, certainly he would have in his influence. And the two candidates in Edo, just like in Ondo, also from the same area, but unfortunately, unlike Edo, for Ondo, the current governor is on the ballot. Unlike Edo, the governor was not on the ballot. And then you had the APC, who was the opposition in Edo State, also were on the ballot and they were government at the center. But you had PDP that was government at the state. But in this case, the APC is government at the state, their government at the center, their candidate is the governor. And so it is almost as if, the indices are different. They are completely different, unlike what happened in Edo State. So we are not going to see, there's no way, no Jupiter, that would make us see, the kind of close contest that we saw in Edo. And like my friend and brother had said here, the political gladiators in the states just feels, look, the governor, being one of them now, former governors and, politicians and, all of that, being one of them, and they just, I would call it complacent, but they have decided to throw their weight behind a current governor, irrespective of their political affiliation. And so that also would work largely in favor, you know, or has also worked largely in favor of the governor. And like I said, Nigerian election finance play a very key role. The PDP candidate Agbola has not, you know, been able to show that he has the financial muscle to go into this election. And then also, and that's why you see, it's almost as if the governor, believing that, you know, he has won the election, it's almost, the vibes coming from the ruling party is not there. Even some of his supporters are not happy that there is no enough mobilization for them to work with, because, you know, it's almost like this is a walkover, so why do we want to overdo ourselves?
And I think because, look, I was in the state just a week ago now, and from what you could see on the ground, and, you know, from my sense of what the situation, you know, from what I saw, you clearly could tell that the PDP candidate was going to struggle, because obviously, I mean, his campaign was floundering, if you like. It was... Yeah, the entire atmosphere was dominated by the governing party. You just wouldn't find the posters of the PDP candidate. So,
sorry, quickly, DG. Also, in every election, apart from the finances coming from the candidate and from the party at the state level, there's also what you call support from the, you know, national office of the party. For in this case, unlike Edo, the PDP candidate is not holding any political office. He does not have the support of any political office holder in the state. Secondly, the PDP at the national level, as we speak now, is completely in disarray.
Yes.
The only, financial watchers they had then, who were former governor of Rivers State, Wike, is currently in hands in glove, you know, in a boxing ring with the PDP, the leaders of the PDP. So how do you expect, you know, a party that cannot put its house in order in at the national level, you know, to support a candidate, and then the candidate also haven't been out of politics for the past 4 years, or out of office, for the past 4 years, also would want to keep something. He wouldn't want to throw all he has into the ring only for him to come out, you know, bruised and battered. So without a national PDP support, without a PDP support from the state, there's only little that, you know, he can do. The PDP governors also had not truly, you know, fully shown cohesion and leadership. The the Bauchi state governor, the PDP governors basically also need support from some quarters. So it will be difficult for them. Look at the crisis they're even facing in Cross River State. So it will be difficult for them to even come together and begin to support a candidate in Ondo.
So, Muyiwa, one other party that quite a number of people looked at in the run-up to this election was the Labour Party. Some people had expected the Labour Party was going to make a very strong showing, but we just have to wait and find out. It's after the election. But then you look at the troubles in the Labour Party, and just on the eve of the election, their candidate was disqualified by the court and replaced, and a replacement was ordered. There's no question at all that would certainly affect the performance of the party in this election.
No doubt about that. I mean, Labour Party should have been strong in this election. We should remember that the Mimiko was a member of Labour Party in that state, and he left. I mean, you will expect that he will have had some kind of groundswell of support in Ondo State. And then, given what happened in 2023 election, he also had, you know, not so much in Ondo State, but at least he also made some impression. But it's at the national level, the Labour Party is having its own crisis, and you don't even know who, you know, you can even say the authentic leader of the party, and that also is affecting them. I mean, if you look at what happened in the last election before this one, the Edo State election, that also affected the candidates in Edo State. And I even think that, because I mean, he was the only of the three major candidates in Edo State. Olumide Akwata was the only one from the south, which are the population. But eventually, the two other parties actually were the ones that were dominant in the South, not even Olumide Akpata himself of the Labour Party. So that's to tell you that Labour Party itself is finding, they are also trying to look for how to solve their own troubles. And I don't see how well they can do in this election. I mean, it's, again, to say what we said earlier, it's a one-horse race anyway. Even if PDP were not to have done well, it won't be Labour Party that will come second in Ondo State.
Yeah. Well, we wait and see. But yeah. I suppose you must have heard the PDP governorship candidate accusing INEC of, well, bungling the process, even when it's not ended. He said when he went to vote that it took about 10 minutes for the beavers to capture him. And so for that, he's been calling for the resignation of the chairman of INEC and the resignation of the rec of the state. That's the state rec now. What would be your reaction to that?
Well, you know, the politicians don't know that they increasingly demarcate their profession. If they call politics a profession, every time they go for election, whether they are prepared or otherwise, and the moment they see that they are not likely to win, they begin to say that the process is this, is that, is that. I watched your correspondent in Akure shortly before this one program started, and she was talking about, she was in Alagbaka, I think that should be the Akure. And you could see I mean, it was about the time they were closing the pool that we saw only one person coming in to come and vote. You see, people have, and then she also spoke to people and they said that whether you vote or not, your vote will not count. Where are they getting these soundbites from? From the politicians themselves, who are demarcating their profession, who, when they lose the election, rather than taking it in his stride and begin to prepare for the next phase. I mean, look at the American election that was just concluded. In spite of all the expectations by some people that America was going to have a female president for the first time, it didn't happen. Kamala Harris came around to say, well, that was the decision of the people, and then she moved on. And that means that they begin to campaign for the next election, which will happen in 4 years. But here in Nigeria, what do we have? Even before the votes are counted, the candidate already saying that, you know, this happened. If you waited 10 minutes to vote, that doesn't mean that the process is flawed. There could have been one or two challenges. So I would rather say that politicians should begin to see how they will make politics. I mean, how they will let people know that votes really truly count. You know, and that is actually a whole process itself. Yeah. But it has to start from the politicians making people to believe that if I lose, yes, I lose, I accept defeat, and then I move on to the next.
And I think what you've said is very important, because politicians always sell this impression that votes don't count, but that is actually not the case. Libros, you heard from our reporter saying that turnout has been poor. I mean, from what she has seen, the turnout has been poor, especially in Akure, where you have the majority of the PVCs collected. And of course, Akure is the population center of that state. They have the highest population, and that is one area that every candidate would want to win. So if you have a situation where people are not coming out to vote, and we've had these reports in other locations as well, what exactly do you think would be the problem? Because this has become a recurrent issue. We saw that in Edo State. We saw it in other states where elections took place. Is it that people are losing faith in the electoral process? What's going on?
Yeah, Deji, is a mixed bag. You know, it's in between. People are losing faith. Our population is also overbloated. The figures are not real. They are hyped. So we've still not been able to completely clean the electoral register where you can say you don't have multiple registration. Then some people still use this voter's card as an identity card. Some persons are in Sokoto, but they would come to Akure to register. On the day of election, you don't see them vote in these places. And coupled with the fact that there are still this belief that processes can be manipulated. Yeah, why we believe that the election vote counts, but how well do they count? If those votes do not count, politicians won't buy it. So that means to a very large extent they count. But INEC also, we agree there are, glitches here and there, but INEC also needs to consistently, live above board. INEC should not be seen as an apron string of any ruling party, where once the party at the center is involved or once the president is perceived to be interested in an election, you know, parties will do everything by every means to ensure that, you know, a candidate is particularly delivered. And then we also agree, like Ondo State, a lot of people also will not be too interested because for them, we all agree here is a one-horse race.
Yeah.
So if it's a one-horse race and the other candidates, also being a one-horse race, the people also can see all the candidates from the same prison. That head on tail, you're like, look, anyone you vote is the same outcome that you will get. And this idea of jumpology, where candidates do not belong to political party, not on the basis of ideology, but on the basis of, you know, it's my turn to chop. And so people see through them. And like Mewa has said, they consistently demarket their profession. And so people see through them. People are not interested. It's like, either way, whether you vote or not, these are the politicians that would win. And so either way, we don't want to really, you know, suffer, put ourselves through the pains of having to stay under the sun to vote in somebody who will, you know, come out and turn out to be the same thing. So the mindset of the politicians need to change. The attitude and the modus operandi of the umpire also need to change. There's need to up, you know, the ante and win back the confidence of the people that truly, if there is no performance from one side, then the people have the right to, you know, outvote that person in the next election. And then lastly, on this issue, you find out that I want to quickly take, you know, a bite on that last question on Labour Party. You know, Mimiko also left the Labour Party and moved to Zenith Labour Party.
Yes.
You know, so, and then the Labour Party, what even brought Labour Party to light before when Mimiko joined Labour Party in Ondo, and people saw Mimiko as
and he won election on that platform.
Yes, because people saw him then as the engine room of PDP, you know, in the state.
Which
and
is
so
true.
When he left PDP and moved into Labour, so people just gravitated towards him and followed him. So he won election. That was what even brought Labour Party to limelight. After when Mimiko left Labour Party, you know, also went back to the doldrum, almost died a natural death, until Peter Obi came to Labour Party. And from the way the campaigns went, it was Labour Party almost became synonymous with Peter Obi. And after the election, it became also obvious and clear.
And we saw Obi campaigning for the Labour Party in the build-up to this election in Akure. He was there.
And, you know, see, distinguished DG, there is difference between Obi throwing his hat in the ring in the general election and, you know, fulfilling all, what do you call it, all righteousness to campaign for a candidate, just like we saw it in Edo. There's difference between just coming as a Labour Party leader. What do they have in common? What do these candidates have in common with the belief and ideas that people saw in Obi when they followed him for the national election? And how well has Obi been able to also rein in or mend the fences of the crisis rocking the Labour Party at the center? Look at the Labour Party, the only governorship candidate, or the only governor that the Labour Party has. The local government election that he conducted were the candidates, you know, of the party. You know, so that's to show you that the Labour Party also has not been able to put his ass in order, just like every other party in Nigeria. What it means is that it's just a platform for contesting election, and they can leave at any time. And the people are already seeing through that.
And that only governor of the Labour Party now, we are not even so sure whether he seems to have one leg in the Labour Party and one leg outside. So we are not so sure if he will remain in the Labour Party until the end of his first term. But Muiwa, let me quickly ask you this. You look at this entire process. It's very crucial for the political parties. If the PDP wins this, of course, it would say, look, it's like a referendum on the APC that people are not happy with the APC across the country. And so that, look, if they win this, they would say it would definitely be a bounce for the party. And the impression they would have is that, look, across the country, people are now gravitating towards it, and that, you know, that could stand it a good chance now in 2027. The APC too is looking at this. There's no question at all that the APC would see this as any kind of victory now. If the APC wins this, the APC would definitely consider this as an endorsement of its government at the national level and of its policies and all of that. What's your take on this?
No doubt about that. This would be an endorsement of the government at the center or otherwise.
But you don't think this
But,
this is, I mean, whatever the outcome of this election is, it will be more about local issues than national issues?
That's what I wanted to say, that, you know, we must remember that politics is local. You know, because at the federal level, yes, you may have APC governing the, you know, but look at what happened in Edo State, for instance. You will expect that with the, you know, hardship across the country, people are complaining bitterly, unable to feed themselves, unable to meet their obligations, and everything is heaped on the government at the center, which is the APC government. You would think that those factors will work against APC in the Edo State election. But eventually, those things didn't work against APC. Because there are other dynamics, there are other factors within, you know, the political space that will also count. So whether APC wins this one or not, well, we might see it as an endorsement or otherwise for the APC. But I think that we have to look at it from the point of view of the local people themselves. The Ondo South has never produced a governor in Ondo State. And this is the first opportunity they're having. Interestingly, the two leading political parties have their candidates from that senatorial zone. So it now goes beyond what party, whether party at the center or which this other party that is opposition. It now comes to, well, we have either way we win. You know, so there are other things, other factors that you will now have to consider before they can then decide who takes it. Perhaps because the APC candidate is already the incumbent, they probably will feel like, okay, let's have him run again. Don't also forget that there are some people who know, I mean, constitutionally, if Ayédàtiwa wins, he has only 4 more years to spend. He can't do another term.
No, that's debatable, but yeah. we're going to talk. I'm going to leave that for liberals to take on. Okay. But just finish. Okay.
So there are some people who feel like, okay, why not support Ayédàtiwa, because it will leave us sooner than if we have a fresh candidate. I mean, depending on what the law says, I mean, liberals will give us more details on that. So I'm saying that, you know, the local dynamics, you know, local tendencies will count in every election. It's not going to be what happens at the federal level that will replicate itself at the state level or at the local government level.
Liberals, let me allow you to weigh in on this issue, because it's actually a controversial one. We saw it play out in Bayelsa State. We've seen it play out in some other states where the incumbent governor had done probably part of a term of the previous government, and then so what exactly should Ayédàtiwa win this election? Of course, he would be sworn in as governor. Can we say he would be sworn in as governor for a second time? Because obviously he would be taking the oath of governor, office of governor, yes, for a second time.
That's section 180 of the Constitution.
So can he run again?
Subsection 2. There's, like you said, there's been argument back and forth on it, because if you look at section 180 of the Constitution, subsection 2, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, section 1 of this section, the governor shall vacate his office at the expiration of a period of 4 years, commencing from the date when he, in the first place, in the case of a person first elected as a governor under this Constitution, he took the oath of allegiance and oath of office. The person last elected to the office took the oath of allegiance and oath of office, or would, but for his death, have taken such oath. So the issue here now is the oath of allegiance and oath of office. Because also, if you go further down, the Constitution was subsequently amended to avoid a situation where one person, just like the Goodluck Jonathan's case, and that it was subsequently amended that if you are ending the tenure of a former governor
who died in office,
then it is presumed that that tenure also, you have done one term with that office. So unlike before, where you say it cannot count, that should not count, because the position of the law is that you are taking oath of office and oath of allegiance in that tenure. And so you cannot now take oath of office and oath of allegiance for 3 times. So that's the
essentially what you're saying is that should Lucky Ayedatiwa.
Even if it was 1 day left, even if it was 1 day left in office that he took oath of office and oath of allegiance, then he cannot do 8 years in office. That's the current position. Unlike before, when you would say, well, he only ended the tenure of a former governor. Now the law is that whether it was a tenure of a former governor you were ending, but you took oath of office and oath of allegiance to occupy that office. And so the presumption is that you took that office from the beginning. And so you will now contest another election for just 1 term because you had a previous term. Otherwise, since the Constitution also say that you shall have a term of 4 years, maximum of 2 terms, then if you do the first 2 years and then you do another 4 years, you do another 4 years again, some persons might end up having to occupy office for 10 years, despite the fact that the Constitution says strictly, it is 8 years. But, lawyers, some people would want to throw spanners in the work, create crisis where there is none, just like, the debate we had with Abuja back and forth. Despite the fact that all the lawyers in the team knew what the Constitution was talking about, but they just gave the impression to the layman and, made it look as if, there was a crisis where
So in other words, we could say this could be one of the reasons why, because politicians are smart.
Yes.
This could be one of the reasons why you see this broad support among politicians in the state from all the zones supporting Ayedatiwa.
Yes,
knowing that,
look, for them, this is an opportunity. If you support any other candidate, that candidate might likely, if he wins, that candidate might likely want to do 8 years. But for Ayedatiwa, who had, finished the tenure of Aketi, the presumption under the law is that he has done 1 term. And so what is remaining is just 4 years. So he can't do more than 4 years. So let them, for them it is, let everybody support him. And after that, we start on a clean slate. So that's also one of the reasons I think that, all the political gladiators, are supporting Ayedatiwa, and which is good for them. And then also for the people of, Ondo South, that had never produced a governor before, it is also easier and better for them to allow a governor who is already seated to continue rather than want to gamble with somebody who, they are not too sure if he would win or not. So that's why you also see massive support from the people for the incumbent governor. And then on the issue of a referendum, truly, it would be, if a PDP wins this, they are definitely going to go to town to say it was a referendum on the APC, and the people do not truly want APC because of the hardship they have brought on the people. But like Muyiwa said, all governance is local. Whatever the kind of governance and the kind of structure or the kind of economy that you have at the local level, that is what will actually, impact most especially on the people. Irrespective of what the Naira or the dollar is doing, if the federal government and the state government collaboration had strengthened local government administration in Nigeria, I tell you, people would have been able to feel the pang and the impact of, these subsidies gone and the floating of the Naira. Because the local government would have been able to stabilize and cushion, job provisions and food at the local level, and that the impact will not be too fed. But Nigeria is what it is. We don't even discuss local government level. We're all fixated at the federal government, and the federal government also loves it. It's also a blame game, ping pong for state government and the federal government. And so the state government basically don't do anything. And he said also clearly, governance is local. Challenges also is local. And the only way you can solve it is local. It is for the federal government to provide an enabling environment. But what the state government is supposed to do is to build those infrastructure at the local level that will cushion the hardship. But are we saying the governors do it? The answer is definitely no. So election for them also now is not about those challenges. It's just about, no, it's our turn, and let our son remain there until the turn of another zone comes. And how well they do, it's basically left to the people. And
I know that, infrastructure development is a very big issue in Ondo State. So whoever wins this election, it is something that that individual would have to deal with. Whether it's an incumbent governor who stays in office or someone else. But look, there's a dearth of infrastructure in that state. There's a lot of issues, I would say, that need to be addressed in that state. Quite a lot of them. Whether you're talking about infrastructure, you're talking about employment, whatever it is, the education sector, everything, health, everything. Honestly, things are basically rock bottom in that state. So let's just hope that at the end of this process, whoever emerges would actually wake up. If it's the incumbent governor, he wakes up and to work for that state, to address the issues that the people are contending with. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for coming on the program. We just have to draw the curtain there and wait to see how the process plays out in Ondo State. Voting would have ended by now, but just as we said, anyone who is on the queue would be allowed to vote before counting begins. There's no doubt at all that in some places, in some polling units now where voting is no longer taking place just because you don't have people on the queue, counting would have started. So before long, we'll begin to see results coming from the various polling units, because as it is done, after counting is done, results are declared at the polling unit. These results are pasted, and then that's when the collation process begins, from the wards to the local government to the state. So
comes in.
yeah, so eventually, and very quickly, liberals, before we go on, after the voting and the counting, that is when another process begins, and that process is probably the most crucial. That's where things happen, right?
Yes, that's the magic. That's where we call the magic.
That's where the election is decided.
Yes, that's where the election is decided, and that's why people are clamoring for the IREV and the beavers, and all of that, exactly. So that the results that are sorted and then announced at the polling unit that are transmitted, can be viewed, and then you really don't need, exactly. Any special collation. But unfortunately, the Supreme Court has said the IREV is for viewing. And so you still go to the polling center, the collation center, to collate manually, and then manipulations.
Muiwa, let me just give you a few seconds. Your last word.
Yeah, I think that we should also realize that we are all stakeholders in this process, election and every other thing, and then do the right thing. Because if we don't do the right thing, it will continue to hurt us. And just like we are getting hurt at every stage now in our country, there's no reason why we will invest so much in the electoral process, INEC, all the supporting, the police, the security, and then end up not being able to give the result that is desired, for the people. I mean, it doesn't matter who wins, but the thing is that the process must be, properly,
okay.
properly done. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, thank you once again for coming on the program. Okay. Thanks a lot for your time. Well, that's it for now, but we'll continue to stay with the process to find out what the outcome of this election is. So probably sometime tomorrow, would know who has won and lost this election. So continue to stay tuned to TV 360 as we continue our coverage of the Ondo State governorship election. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.